Dane Rose, and in this video I want to explore love. I want to look at it from as many dimensions and angles as I've come across that make some degree of sense. And it's definitely an exploration, because for all the lip service that we pay as a culture to the word love, we don't get a single hour studying it in high school, typically not in college, certainly not kindergarten, and other than the preachings to love without any education on how to do that other than blind obedience, we don't get much about love at church. So this is an exploration, and I'm excited to see how it all pieces together. Now, we're going to create a couple of different domains, and the first domain is from Helen Fisher's work on different parallel but separate regions of the brain. And according to Helen Fisher, the brain has three systems for dealing with love. One is lust, carnal desire. The other is need and attachment. This is an emotional need and attachment, often overlaid or amplified by physical needs and attachments, as in a financially dependent relationship. And the other is romantic idealism. And this is more of the troubadour style of love, where you have in the case of the troubadours, a woman who was a muse, who was a romantic ideal that a poet, that a warrior, etc., would wear, wear an emblem in honor of a lady. But in our current system, this is the amount of respect, the amount of idealization of the partner. And so in a culture that idealizes power and social prestige, an ideal embodiment of love might be someone who is, for a woman, masculine, tall, more dominant, articulate, more dominant in a word or language-based culture, has more money, commands more dominance in a company, that kind of thing. So there is the romantic ideal, which for Hitler was the white, Aryan race. And so there's the love of an ideal, and this is a transcendent love. For that matter, Germany killed itself in the pursuit of this ideal. As many idealists, many of us seek out in search of an ideal and end up broke or frustrated and exhausted in the search of an ideal. So this is the form of love that is more transcendent, meaning it transcends the self. People will sacrifice themselves. I was just reading on the Ethereum blockchain. The Ethereum Classic group had a situation where a contract on Ethereum, a business contract, was poorly written, and as a result, a certain party stole $50 million. Now, the human response to someone stealing $50 million of your money is, give me back my money, you son of a bitch. I don't care what the contract says. I want my money back. But in the sacrifice and of the romantic ideal, there is a group of Ethereum holders that said no. It doesn't, because we believe in the ideal of whatever the contract says, that's what will happen. That's the ideal of many blockchain technologies, is they cannot be interfered with by any moral authority. No government, etc., can interfere. So it's exactly what is said is what should happen. And so people in sacrifice and in service to an ideal would rather lose $50 million because in the letter of the law, the thief didn't steal it because they obeyed the contract, if you kind of vaguely follow. So this actually splinters the community. And the first thing to learn about love is there are many tensions between the different factions of love. And these tensions bring unity or divergence, oneness or complexity, depending on who you are with. For example, another important dimension of love is one of a value hierarchy. So let's say we have Julie and Sam. Now, both Julie and Sam put miserable hell and avoiding miserable hell down at the bottom. No change there. But Sam puts avoiding shame as kind of top priority, but Julie puts avoiding the feeling slightly different, feeling inadequate. So for the number 2 position, they start to diverge. So Julie would rather avoid feeling inadequacy before feeling a sense that she'd done something wrong. Sam would rather avoid the feeling that he's done something wrong rather than the sense of inadequacy. And what's interesting about a value hierarchy and its lens into unity and divergence, love and pain, depending on how you define love, is that every single person has a value hierarchy, and every single value exists somewhere on that value hierarchy for every human being. Another way of saying that is that every single human being values the same thing, but in a different order of priority. A different order of priority for avoidance and a different order of priority for seeking. And if you are with someone who values your values, which are really everyone's values, in your order, meaning I would never lie to someone, no, me too, I would never lie to someone. But except, what if our daughter was going to da-da-da-da-da? It's like, no, I would still never lie to anyone. But no, in that case, I would rather lie to someone than have our daughter be raped. No, I still wouldn't lie to someone. You see, so there's a divergence. And it is these divergent value hierarchies in highly charged emotional areas. There are primary values, and there are primary situations, is probably another way of putting it. In other words, you have 2 people attracted to each other with lust and wanting to have sex, and one person says, oh, I love Shakespeare, and the other person says, me too, I love Shakespeare. And they don't actually love Shakespeare, but there's no conflict. The other person may even be well aware of the fact that they've been to their house 3 times and there's not a single Shakespeare book. They've never quoted a passage. And so this obvious divergence in values around Shakespeare is seen perhaps as flattery. If one person values Shakespeare and the other person does not but says they do, and the other person values flattery, then the other person may actually get points for flattering. But if the other person hates flattery, now the chemistry has gone down, because the person who says they value Shakespeare and clearly doesn't is now in a negative terrain in the other person's books called hypocrisy, which they hate. They hate hypocrisy with a passion. They will never have sex with any hypocrite. And so the fact that so-and-so said they love Shakespeare has now ruled them out of all possible consideration with a passion. And the point is that everyone hates hypocrisy. Everyone likes and doesn't like flattery. Everyone likes having sex in some situations and doesn't like having sex in some situations. Everyone likes pleasure and will choose it in some situations, and everyone likes pleasure and will not choose it in other situations. Horny person at a funeral. Many people will not choose to have sex or express any sexual flirtation at a funeral. Other people feel the exact same lust and sexuality in the exact same degree and think, wow, this is a perfect opportunity. So it's about the hierarchy of values. Meaning, if you put flattery in the number 1 position of things to avoid and the number 38 position of something that can be nice when you like the person, you're going to hate someone you don't particularly like who flatters you. But if you put I don't care at all, flattery is not to be avoided, hypocrisy is human nature, no big deal, we can all see right through that. And it's so lovely that someone shows an interest by attempting to make me look young and beautiful when we all know that I'm old and not particularly attractive and this and that and the other. So isn't that sweet? I like that young man, you know. And so this is it's all the same values, just in a different order. Now, this is important to understand because who you love and who you hate has very little to do with the objectivity of the other person and of the objectivity of yourself. Meaning, for example, my mother used to lie, number one. She'd lie about things that were important to me, number two. Then she wouldn't keep her promise, and then she would lie about lying about it. Meaning, oh, I never said that. I never said I would give you a piece of cake if you did this and that and the other. And then she would punish me for protesting the lie about the lie, or of being sarcastic about her blatant hypocrisy, which it seemed that she did not notice. You know, it's hard to tell if someone is so dumb that they don't notice their own stupidity, or if they notice. So you can tell the bitterness that's there. It's like, so I hate liars with a passion, not because lying is objectively this worse than murder. You know, see, I often feel sympathy for murderers. I wonder what their childhood is like and this and that and the other. Because I've never been murdered. You know, I didn't get charged around a particular value. No one in my life has ever been murdered. And I just feel sad that someone is in so much misery and frustration and bottled up energy that the best solution they've been able to find in the entire thing they could be doing with their time is to have to get some weapon somewhere, go kill someone, obviously feel some degree of angst about it, and then have to hide who they are for the rest of their life. I mean, it's like these, The murder victim is off in heaven or enjoying themselves in other dimensions. But, what a life to live as a murderer, and what drove them to it. So you can see that I'm pointing this out to illustrate the fact that my emotional charge around lying does not make rational sense given my emotional charge around murder, except in the fact that the pain that I was exposed to in the unique mix of pain delivery of my child has left me passionately against lying, never lying to a friend or a lover once, and wanting nothing to do with people who lie, but even less with people who lie about lying, and then gloss over all that by saying, well, everyone does it. It's like you lie, then you don't even admit it, and then you just say that everyone, what a bunch of shit. It's like, get out of here. And so we have a hierarchy of values that is very personal. It's shaped by our personal experience. And so it's unbalanced. Meaning the person who's did not feel reduced into helpless rage on a repeat basis and then be abandoned and shamed in that rage and punished can objectively say, well, lying's not a big deal. But the person where that's been a defining pain is going to say this is a big fucking deal. And it is not looked at through the rational lens. The lie is looked at through the emotional charge built up of thousands of independent moments in which some of the worst moments of that person's life are packed together in a pattern that are all held in this one word, lying, hypocrite. And so you're going to deal with all that emotional charge if you come into connection with that word. And there's positives, of course, and negatives around this. I've never lied, cheated on, in any friend or lover in my entire life. On the other hand, the attachment due to the intensity of repeat emotional experience is such that someone who may love me very much but lie is going to have a hard time getting through to me that they love me if I'm noticing and focusing on the lie. If that just makes sense. So going back to this need and attachment circuit in the brain, this lust circuit in the brain. Now these are separate, meaning you can need, I feel safe with you, I need you, I don't go anywhere, I want to be close to you. A 6-year-old with their mother, etc. This is the need attachment region of the brain. You can feel in lust with someone. Wow, that's a hot girl. Wow, that's a hot guy. I'd love to fuck that guy. And not feel any need, and actually simultaneously have mild disdain. Idiot, long hair, but I'll bet he's a good fuck, And so you can have lust, you can have lust independent of respect, independent of romantic idealism. You can have need and attachment independent of lust or independent of romantic idealism. Someone might need the other person emotionally, and the other person will say, well, I don't need you emotionally, but I want to have sex with you. Okay, you can have sex with me, the prostitute stage of relationship. You can have sex with me as long as you don't leave me. I don't particularly care what you do or don't do with my body. Just keep me safe, like me, don't criticize me, don't leave me. Now, this is often, as an aside, a recipe for abuse, because the person who has a very strong need and attachment, who plays on the empathy of someone else, who constrains their own life in order to be sympathetic to the other person's need is, on the one hand, being very generous, but there is a part of the person who is constraining their own life in order to not abandon someone who is desperately needy of them, but who that person does not respect, does not lust after, does not need. There's an imbalance. And that's the first principle of love that I want to bring in, is balance. So this is in the domain of principles. So we have the domains of the brain. We have three primary types of love. We have value hierarchies, and we have principles. The principle is balance. And the principle of balance says that whatever is wildly out of balance with a lover tends to increase volatility, risk, and with that, the probability of dissociation and pain. Whatever is in balance in relationship will tend to create longevity, less volatility, more of a sense of being met. So this is a principle. So parts of the brain, values and value hierarchy. And just to complete the value hierarchy thing, you may not think that you value being shot in the head. You might place that well down on your value hierarchy of all the possible human experiences you could have. But most likely, it is preferable than watching your daughter be raped and then shot in the head. So you get a sense, okay, I've got a choice here. The kidnapper is, it's her or it's me. It better be me. Line the gun up, shoot me in the head. So you can see that there's always something worse. That in a duality of choice, okay, I've got great conversation and small boobs. I've got great boobs and terrible conversation. What's it going to be? I've got quickie with no condom in the elevator with someone that's turning me on, or faithfulness to my partner. What's it going to be? I've got security and stability in a job I despise with a boss I don't respect, or going out on my own feeling absolutely terrified and not knowing what I'm going to bring in as income, or whether my wife will stay with me if I fail. What's it going to be? In a value hierarchy, the arena in which it expresses itself is the arena in which you have to make a choice, and there are values that will benefit this choice, and there are values that benefit this choice. And the question is, for you, what do you value most? And then there are side areas. You see, that because it's not just one value against the other. A lot of people, if nobody knows, it would be one choice. If a stranger knew, it would still be that choice, but less interestingly. If their mother knew, it would be that choice. And if the whole world knew, it wouldn't be either of the two choices, because they're intent on posturing to the whole world on national TV, this, and this. Because what's really underlying that as the primary value is being liked and being respected and feeling safe because you are liked and respected, feeling secure, and that you belong. So the bigger the circle, the more you will behave this way and that way and the other. And so in this value hierarchy, the sub-values, such as pleasure or pain in this moment, often tie into the larger algorithm of, I personally do not have a problem having sex with a 14-year-old girl if she likes it, if she initiates it, if she's attractive, and if she doesn't have VD and we use a condom, and if the event equals the event and we're traveling. I don't have a problem with that personally. I don't think I'm hurting her. I don't think I'm hurting myself. Fine. But I have a terrible problem if her parents are going to find out. That would be terrible for her. I have a terrible problem if my brother found out. He's a judgmental son of a bitch, and I'd be hearing the end of it for the next 10 years. I have a problem if we're living in the same town, not because I don't mind having a relationship with her, but because the culture is so judgmental about the age gap that the relationship would have to end, regardless of what she and I wanted, and regardless of how that unfolded, and the amount of pain probably coming towards her and me in the outrage in the culture would ruin things. So if the culture didn't exist, in fact, if I had a community of people, for example, a tribal community, where it was normal for young girls at 12, 13, 14, whenever they initiated, as in the Thoe tribe in Brazil, if I had a culture where there was no shame, where there was no crime, where the only focus was on how people felt and the well-being of those involved, and she initiated, which is an appropriate for the balance of power. You know, the more power is concentrated based on this principle of balance, the more power is concentrated, the more important it is to defer most of that power to the interest of the other person if the relationship is healthy. Meaning, if you're the president of the United States and your girlfriend wants to leave you and you threaten to blow her family up with a nuclear bomb, it's not out of the question these days, then that's not, you know, that's a massive imbalance of power. You're not going to have a healthy relationship. If you threaten to audit their brother's taxes, you know, this is not a balanced power dynamic. So it's not going to feel free. So love is not going to exist. When there's no freedom, the other emotions that come in around survival, the deeper brains kick in when there's no freedom. The only way there can be freedom is if there's a certain balance of power. You know, if, you know, my mother did not know how to make any money, balance a checkbook, had never worked for herself when she married my father. So when she came to hate my father because he had affairs, when she came to loathe and hate my father, the healthiest thing would have been to say, okay, fine, you want to be like that, I'm going off, no harm done, see you later. But she was terrified because he knew how to make money, she did not. He knew how to navigate in the world, she did not. He knew how to do this and that and balance the checkbook, she didn't. So she felt afraid. In the fear, there was not a balance of power. So in fact, you don't get hatred unless you have helplessness. This is an important emotional alchemy. When you have someone who feels completely powerful, hatred does not exist, because the recipe of hatred is made up in part of powerlessness. When you hate a man for cheating on you, it's not because you've got 3 better men who can just take on where you left off, who are more fun, more enjoyable, help you grow more, you feel more safe and secure with, and you've just been pitifully waiting out of pity for your partner because they were insecure, and good, thank God they've found someone else and they've made it completely easy because they're cheating. So see you later, and I'm off with the new guy. This is not an environment of hate. The person, in this case a woman, who hates has no other option, feels like the best years of her life are lost, hates her own weakness, and then hates him for exposing it, doesn't know what to do, doesn't know, how would I open an account, what would I do, this and this, and she hates him for bringing out this helplessness. That is the reality, because she doesn't know what to do. Because in her value hierarchy, escape has always been higher on her value than learning and creating independence for herself. And that's been perfectly fine with him, because it gave him security. You see, security was higher for him, and if she can't escape because she doesn't know anything, he feels slightly more secure. If she can escape by not being grounded in reality, she feels better. So there's a partnership in different hierarchies of values for different things, but one of the byproducts of that kind of chemistry is hate at the point where the self-respect, the sense of what is a dignified thing to do is to do this, but I don't know how, I don't want to face it, I don't want to do the work, I hate you, you horrible, miserable person. Why? For making me feel helpless. You should have taught me how to balance a checkbook. You should have done and there's this deep hatred. Now, the hatred will not heal until you feel powerful. In fact, once my mother learned how to start a successful entrepreneurial business in her 50s, she began talking fondly of my father again for all of the interesting and exciting experiences that he'd exposed her to. And there was no more hate because there was no more powerlessness. And so this is an important aspect on another arena of love, which is the chemistry of emotion, where you have core raw material, and then it is divided and splintered, much like metals and chemistry, into subcategories of different taking dirt in the ground and turning it into uranium, for example, or plutonium, not plutonium. I'm frankly quite ignorant when it comes to chemistry. But taking base materials, iron ore, and turning it into alloy and, stainless steel and stuff like that, is a sophisticated process. You heat it to this temperature, then you let it cool down, then you skim off this degree, then you add this degree to this temperature, and then you smelt it, and you roll it out, and then you cut it, and then you mix it with this and this thing, and then you get this new synthesis of material that could not have been created any other way. And what's important to understand is that the emotional state is as variable, complex, and nuanced as metals, as earth, as biology. But we just don't have the emotional literacy to know something so basic as, if you hate someone, look for the powerlessness in the recipe, do what it takes to get out of the powerlessness, then you'll be able to release the hate. The hate can turn back into this and this and this element. Now you can use these energies, and your emotions can now start working for you. But in the meantime, you can use the hate that you feel, project it outwards, motivate you to get powerful, and you'll transcend the powerlessness and the hate will evaporate. Wow, good to know, right? Instead of just deteriorating into addiction, which is one of the other directions of hate, is you can't face the powerlessness, or rather than, as my mother thankfully did, starting a successful business and being able to return to the fond memories of the upside, which is there in any relationship, deteriorating into self-loathing and shame, which is the path of addiction, when powerlessness and overwhelm cannot be faced, when the support is not there to face it, etc., etc. Now, we have the wheel of emotion, and if we looked at emotions like a probability field, we basically have raw energy that, depending on which prism it's shown through at what intensity, very much like the value hierarchy, any emotion can be created, any human state can be created. And in the vulnerability of humanity, it's very important to understand that another human being or group of human beings can induce, through the vulnerability of the body, any human state imaginable, with enough time, work, and effort and intention. For example, there are drugs, psychedelic drugs, that make the brain incredibly suggestive. Just stick that drug in a handcuffed person and start suggesting nightmares, and you can take those people into regions of the psyche. To my dismay, this is among the experimentation of our government, of course behind closed doors, because in the United States we value dominance in power above human dignity. Now, it's a complicated relationship, but we would rather, whether it's MK Ultra or importing crack cocaine into black neighborhoods to raise money for the CIA, or any number of other things, and don't in any way put any weight on this unless you take the time to read a book, to actually look at different redacted documents and stuff, and look, because the difference between conspiracy theories that are way out to lunch and, historical fact is taking the time to do the research. So anyway, that's not what this is about, but it is important to understand that every country has a value hierarchy as well. And at this moment in time, there are animal rights activists being denied toilet paper, being denied visitation rights to family, being put in black prisons right alongside different Muslim individuals that are being held in military cells. There's this very complicated legal workaround that we've done to treat domestic terrorists, it's just a word, differently than the rest of the prison situation. And in order to avoid racial profiling lawsuits, we've reclassified animal rights activists as domestic terrorists, because they tend to be white. It tends to be liberal white people who are animal rights activists, so they balance out. You can't say you're racially profiling if you're torturing liberal white animal rights activists and Muslims at the same time, because you got Christian, white, Muslim, Afghani, etc. And so there's this interesting architecture of logic in the value hierarchy that says, well, we can't break the law, but we can destroy the dignity of human beings in the name of fighting terror. And this brings up the other domain I just want to highlight very briefly, which is the microcosm and the macrocosm. That one of the more important set theories around reality is its holographic nature. In good medicine, good doctors will diagnose the family by the diseases in the child. A child's wetting their bed, having nightmares, terrified to look at their father, having learning disabilities. A good doctor says, oh, this father is doing something to terrify this child, and he's expressing his terror in nightmares, bladder control, and manic energy, plus fearful glance at the father. Have you been beating this child? In other words, the intelligent doctor will diagnose the family through the illness in the child, will look at the environment, because an intelligent doctor is looking at the ecological nature of most of reality. The ecological nature that says that this video wouldn't exist if I didn't have an iPad. Why? Because I need to look at myself in order not to have to edit it, because I'm an impatient person. Why? Because Android devices kick into a new file automatically and interrupt me in mid-sentence every 4 gigabytes. Why? Because the file size actually works, so I can create a whole thing in one fell video. Why? Because I'm not being paid. And so I'm not going to irritate myself beyond a certain point to do something I'm not being paid for. Which means that, like, for example, if I was being paid $1,000 an hour to do this, I would do it on any crappy camera. But see, what I'm getting at is this moment is happening because of 1,000 different things in my environment, including the fact that an iPad exists. Because were there no smartphones or movie cameras, as it was 200 years ago, I would not be making a video. So there's an ecological nature between what happens in any given moment in the environment. And part of that is the holographic template, which says that within any moment, for example, if you look at what I'm doing here, there is a lot that you know about the environment from what's going on here. If you look at President Trump and his activities, there is a great deal you can learn about the American psyche by what is and is not tolerated and chosen for what reason, including the election of the president. Because in the holographic principle, we're back to principles, in the holographic principle, so we'll just add that to the pattern of the whole is within the piece, and within the piece you can see the pattern of the whole. If you can look closely at a single atom, there are some people that understand the laws of physics to such a degree that the entire universe becomes probable if they have seen nothing but a single atom. And we have a new environment here. My dog has decided he's bored, which is dividing my attention, which means that you're going to get a different experience, holographic, ecological, what goes on around and in every facet in the environment. The fact that I'm in a building, the fact that buildings exist, the fact that I was able to buy a whiteboard for only $100 as opposed to $1,000 meant I did buy a whiteboard. The fact that I have a whiteboard means that something this complex can be relevant, and the fact that I have a low attention span, which ties into childhood trauma, means that I can't stand my dog bothering this, so I'm going to do something because I can't keep my concentration with an irritable dog. And so there is holographic, there is ecological, there's balance. Now, let's see here. I cannot also grasp this amount of stuff, and so I'm going to put the dog outside. Hang on. Yeah. Now, just to kind of complete that thought, I've rationalized that low video quality, meaning you've got, what is it, this light, this light, this light, and this light. Not perfect. You've got this little tip of a microphone. We'll see how it does. We've got, you know, we've got so much stuff that isn't perfect. And I definitely value perfectionism. It's just that it reaches a point or I don't create anything at all, because none of it's perfect. And at that point, I say this is an unholy God. To be that perfectionist, that all life is crushed because it doesn't meet the perfect standards, is evil. And so, get out perfectionism, hooray, absurdity and imperfectionism. And so this is a wrestling. And these are not only value hierarchies, but they're deities, because we serve our value hierarchy. And in any moment of time, we're deciding whether to do what is necessary to make as much money as possible, to do what is necessary to look as good as possible, to do what is necessary to have sex with someone, to do what is necessary to be nourished, to do what is necessary to keep safe, to do what is necessary to look popular. Whatever the goal is, it is a deity. And we pray to that deity by our behavior. So we have the makeup of emotions, we have value hierarchies, we have the three core centers of the brain, we have principles of balance, particularly around power as being an important element of love. We have the holographic element. But we also have a distinction between self-centered and self-referencing love and other referencing love. Distinctions are very, very important. So in the distinction of self and other, in the distinction of self and other and self-referencing, we tie a little bit, but also move through. It's a different angle of perception. And so if we look at these three forms of love, for example, I want to have sex with you. Now, does that make you feel loved or not? The answer is dependent on whether you want to have sex with me and how you define love. So I want to have sex with you is about me. Now, I say I want to have sex with you. Now, it's a partnering act, and so unless I want to rape you, the back you've got to say, okay, well, I want to have sex with you. And then it feels loving. But I don't know that. My lust, you arouse me, and so I want to have sex with you. My lust is self-referencing. I find this kind of body, this kind of person attractive. I would like to do this with the attraction. It's all about me. Now, the same is true with need and attachment. You're really strong. You have lots of friends. You are popular. Anyone who's seen as your friend looks good. You treat people well. I want that. This is attachment. I want to be that girl that's receiving a diamond ring and driven around in a Rolls Royce. I want to be this. It's all about me. There is nothing about the other person in these desires. I want to fuck you. I want to be treated that way. I need you. And in the romantic idealism, you embody my ideal. You are my idol. I respect you. Now, typically, this is desired, meaning I need you. Sometimes it's, thank heavens, I need you too. And there's a coming together. Back to the principle of balance. When the lust is met with lust, there is a partnering. When the need and attachment is met by need and attachment, there is balance. This is why I emphasize the priority on balance. When it is mutual, that's what balance is. When it is asymmetrical, I want to fuck you. I want nothing to do with you. That's about as asymmetrical as lust gets. Get out of my sight. You disgust me. I want to fuck you. I need you. You see? This is complete asymmetry. This is not felt to be like love for either person for very long. Unless the person has the unfortune of being rewired. Now, this is an important area of love, so we'll go into it. We'll call it the paradigm of language and the abuse contract. Now, why is this important? Well, step inside a parent's brain for a moment. Realize the helplessness, the frustration, the anger, the hatred that comes from powerlessness, the lack of options, the lack of knowledge, the lack of community support that many parents feel results in a profound hostility towards the child. You miserable, stupid lump of shit. How dare you ruin, I did all this stuff and then you scared that guy away. How dare you do this? And there's a lot of hostility towards children. And it's not considered very popular to hate one's children. So the primacy of political correctness and looking good adds a new element of powerlessness, because I do hate my child when they do this and this and this. I hate my child. And I hate my child even more because if I talk about hating my child, which would be wonderful to let off some steam and just, I hate my child. God, I wish I could kill the bastard. It'd be wonderful to let off steam, except that far from being given sympathy and warmth and, oh my goodness, I know what you mean and I'm so sorry, how can I help? You hate your child, you wouldn't believe what so-and-so said, and let's all gang up and ostracize and judge the person who hated their child, which means I hate my child even more because they've put me in this situation where I can't even say what I'm feeling without feeling like a terrible person and expecting condemnation, which is why I hate you even more. So this is one of the realities of parenting in a modern world that is not designed for children, that is not designed with emotional literacy, bonding, attachment in mind. It is designed for lust, because lust sells clothes and makeup and jewelry and all this stuff. And so lust, it is a culture designed for lust, but it is not a culture designed for secure attachment. And very little romantic idealism. I would say we've been on a big decline in there are no troubadours honoring the goddess and, this and that and the other in the general culture. Now, balance, into language and abuse. Now, no parent who hates their child and is scared of being punished for hating their child, which is yet another reason to hate their child, says to their child, look, I am a miserable parent. Nobody taught me how to be a parent. This culture is fucked up for parenting. You are taking all the heat of a crappy job and my anger about it, about, loser men who come and go, this and that and the other. You're a big inconvenience. I absolutely hate you, and it's not your fault. It's a shitty culture in a shitty time in history for children to feel great about their emotional selves. You're going to take the brunt of it. I'm sure you'll eat and binge just like me when you grow older. And I don't want to feel guilty about it, and I don't want to feel it's my fault. So I'm not going to tell you any of this. What I'm going to do, as I'm hating you, glaring at you, and letting a child know through empathy alone, exactly how much they are loathed and wish they would die, I'm going to call this love. No. I'm not leaving to get away from you because I can't stand this situation, and when I'm working hard, I'm able to forget about you. No. I'm going to work 10-hour days and leaving you in the TV and with these person who doesn't take very good care of you, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing that because I love you. That's what I'm doing. And there's because we're in a culture that does not heal abusers. See, because abuse is a virus. It is the contagious passing on of emotional and psychological states. I feel shame and shitty. I feel valuable. I feel helpless. I don't like feeling like that way and being all alone in that. So I'm going to make someone else, the dog, the baby, some other person, my employee, I'm going to make someone else feel helpless, crappy, and just the way I do. And then when I see that the expression on their face that mirrors exactly what I feel but I can't tell anyone about, I don't feel so alone. I don't feel so powerless. I feel powerful. And I feel like, oh, okay, well, at least someone else is suffering as much as I am. I'm satisfied. I have infected another human being with my emotional virus. Now, but again, I don't want to tell that. No. This is not shaming, whatever. This is an employee review. This is an official hiring process. This is for your own good. I'm shouting at you because if you don't get an education and don't do this and that, then what? All the world will come to an end. So when this is going on, there is a rewiring, because for people to feel good about themselves, they have to frame every single thing they're doing in the way that is good. And because our culture is a Puritan culture, it's based on that. The idea is, however irrationally, that being selfless is better than being selfish. Now, they're the same thing. Let's look at that. They're the same thing. Because if I'm truly selfish, what do I want? I want a great life. I want a beautiful world to live in. I want it to smell good. I want it to taste good. I want my water to be clean. I want music. I want great inventions. I want technology going on around me. I want to be rich. I want to have amazing sex. Okay, great. All that's selfish as we define it. Except, what does it take for there to be clean water? Well, the aquifers have to be kept clean. Okay, we've got to do whatever it takes to keep the aquifers clean. Selfless. I want to be a millionaire. Okay, this has to be a prosperous culture. Who's going to buy my products if everyone's poor? I have to, participate with society. I want to be around happy people. So what do I have to do? I have to help people be happy. Because it's not fun to be around miserable people. So there is a tremendous overlap between sincere third generation selfishness and sincere third generation selflessness. They end up with the same actions that are good for everyone, basically. When I say third generation or third level, there's, in this paradigm, you might say, oh, I want a sunny day today. That's first generation thinking, immediate thinking. I want a sunny day. Okay, sunny day. I want another sunny day, sunny day, sunny day. But do I want a complete desert? Do I want dead billions of people? Because there's no water, there's no water, there's no water, because that's the second and third levels of having a continuous sunny day when rain is what replenishes the ecology. And so this is kind of the tension between everyone would like a sunny day, but nobody would like a barren wasteland with no people on it, so we have to have rain. So if you're really selfish, you want rain enough to keep things along. You just have to be an informed selfish person. If you're really selfish, you don't put chemicals in the environment that you eat. If you're really selfish. In fact, there is something very sick in the way a lot of things that are happening that are neither selfless or selfish. They ruin the ecology and the life for everyone equally. It is a kind of suicide, as in the Nazi, we're going to go to war with the entire world. There's nothing more suicidal and wasteful than that. But it's this, and then we're doing it for ourselves. No, you're not. You're committing suicide for a dogma, and it's not self-loving, it's not selfish, it's this mix of transcendent ignorance, because we're not looking at second and third consequences. It's really ignorance. You have selfishness and selflessness going hand in hand, which creates a better world for every single person. And the happiest person is a person who is loved and loved by their entire environment, because the entire environment knows how to love, which means they have all met Maslow's hierarchy of needs: survival, security, love, and belonging, and they're moving towards esteem, etc. And they're all doing it in a harmonious way, which takes a lot of skill and growth. And this is the happiest person around. No survival issues, no security issues, loved and belong in a evidently healthy culture in which they don't have to watch people suffering through divorces, because nobody's doing it. Because the culture actually taught marriage relationships in high school rather than algebra. You see, so you have this illusion of selfishness and selfishness, and then people don't want to be selfish, because in our culture, first you create the illusion that being selfish is different than being selfless, then you package selfish as bad and selfless as good. Now everyone wants to be selfless in order to be good, so they have to do whatever they're doing and package it in a way that sounds selfless. So then kids get sold this story about how this, and this that the kid absolutely hates is being done for their own good, which rewires the language about love. My parents used to beat me and tell me they were doing it for my benefit. Number one, that's the first lie. Number two, that it hurt them more than it hurt me. That's the second lie. Third, that it was necessary. This is the third lie. Now, when these lies get laced into brain chemistry with one trauma after another, it changes the biology in the brain, and certain identities are created, and love gets rewired. People who hurt me, those are people who love. Now, this ties into the abuse contract, because once a parent finishes their beating or their shaming or their negating, etc., they then turn around and say, "Don't make me feel bad." Well, at least my parents did. They turn around and say, "Don't make me feel bad," by pointing out that I'm a hypocrite, that I'm an abuser, that I'm da-da-da-da-da. So, tell you what, I'm going to give you a lollipop. I'm going to give you this nice thing that you like, and then you don't tell anyone about who I am. Right? You got that one? You got it? Okay. Now you start to talk angrily about why I beat you or something like that. Nope, no lollipop for you. I see you don't appreciate my love. And so there's a contract. Do you want the lollipop, 5-year-old, or do you want to be beaten again? Who wants to be beaten? Every child signs the contract with the abuser to protect the delusion and the rewiring of language, so that abuse, sarcasm, rage, betrayal, this is love. Now, this is very, very important, because the culture denies felt experience. You go to school, "I don't want to be in school." That's how you feel. That doesn't matter. How you feel does not matter. Okay, what matters? This little bit of, look at what we're looking at. This is what matters, not how you feel. You're bored, you want to break, You want some coffee? Fuck it. You've got to sit and listen to this and memorize it, regardless of how you feel. That's what we learned in school. Suppress felt experience, suppress the feminine, and emphasize language. Does 2 + 2 = 4? I don't care what you're feeling. I don't care what your mom's doing to you. I don't care what your dad is hitting you. I don't care where your dad is sticking his penis. Does 2 + 2 = 4? Yes or no? Either or, lineal, driven, memory-based verbal attention and consciousness. Now, when you drive the entire education program based on language and left brain lineal thinking, and simultaneously shush, punish, and suppress all feelings and body sensations in the classroom and at home, you are teaching the adult to ignore how love feels and pay attention to the words. I love you. I guess that shotgun, in case I have sex with another man, is for my own good. Right, that's right. It's for my own good. I remember. It's for my own good. And you're jealous and having a jealous rage because you love me so much and because you don't want me to get hurt with another man, right? Oh, I remember. That's what my parents said. And so language and the reversal of the meaning of love becomes, a common sickness in a culture that obsesses about language and suppresses felt experience, which comes back to this self and other. We feel that if we say the word love, and if we're tormenting another person, and just like our parents tormented us, if we're overbearing towards another person, if our parents crossed our boundaries repeatedly and then beat us for expressing them, and then I love you, and you're saying you don't want to have sex with me, you're saying after the dinner I bought to you that you didn't, it's like I'm my dad, and you are going to be loved, whether you like it or not. It's like, oh gosh, there's that word again, love. I guess I better, I am being a bad girl, aren't I, for not loving, So the confusion of language on both sides, because women are not singled out for abuse. Men are not singled out for abuse. And often what gets called love is the rewritten and reattended contract with the abuser based on the rewriting of language that was shoved down the 5-year-old's throat so that the parent could feel good about themselves and protect their disease in a neighborhood where they knew how they had to perform in order to look, and they bribed and participated in whatever it took to get their children to smile and say how happy they were. And Robert Bly talks about how cheerful he had to be in his alcoholic family. It's a great vein of exploration to look at for men. Robert Bly, Iron John, that's on YouTube. Now, language and the contract of abuse is a very, very big obstacle to the felt experience of love. Because when language is brainwashed into a young child, it is often at odds. Meaning, if you were to use a spectrometer of a nature, again, excuse my scientific illiteracy on the exact technical things, but there are skin tension, lie detecting, there are various instruments that measure how relaxed and joyful a person is versus how stressed a person is. And if you would put one of those instruments on a child every time the parent was telling them how much they loved them, and then measured the actual convergence with relaxation and well-being on the child versus divergence and stress, with the mind saying, I guess this is love, I should want love, I'm a bad boy if I don't want love, and the body saying, I don't care what you call this crap. It stinks. Stop hitting me. Stop crossing my boundaries. Stop cramming these useless figures into my mind when I want to go out and play. This is not feeling good. Well, it shouldn't. Then you get people with handcuffs and this and that and the other, and it's like, I don't somehow feel it's love unless you're tying me up, putting my hand behind my back, whipping me, because that's what I learned was love. And it may have been psychologically whipping, it may have been literal whipping, it may have been spanking, but that's what makes sense to me. And it's particularly difficult when there is sexual arousal linked to violence. So in abusive households, typically the parent has been abused, and the innocence of a child is a more feminine characteristic. And so it is not uncommon for very violent fathers to feel sexually aroused as they are beating, whipping, and causing absolute terror in their son or their daughter. It is not uncommon. It is just taboo in an emotionally illiterate and shame-based culture to talk about it. Meaning the father cannot go to his friend down the street and say, I just felt aroused whipping my daughter. Is something wrong with this, and what's going on? Because the answer is not, gee, that's a very good question. Glad you brought it to my attention. I'm glad you care enough about your child to at least be interested. No, the assumption is, oh my God, I can't talk to you. You talk real things, and this is not that kind of culture. And so I'm just going to gossip to somebody else about that and leave that person feeling like absolute shit. Now, he knows that, so he doesn't go down the road and get me help. He probably feels embarrassed to go to a therapist and talk about that as well. Maybe he's afraid it's illegal, and this and that and the other. And he heard this person being arrested for being interested in children, and blah, 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 and I don't want anything to do with that. And you fucking child, how dare you put me in this awkward situation? I don't know what to do. Maybe I should fuck him. It's like, what does this mean? And so there's a lot of dissonance. There's a lot of terror in an emotionally illiterate culture. This conversation is terrifying a lot of people because it's not obeying the taboo lines that keep us emotionally, socially, sexually literate. It keep us in the dark. Now, lust and need are all about me. Romantic idealism can be all about me. A man looks at this feathery blonde walking in the distance and has an ideal. Oh, I bet she's always kind to her husband. I'll bet she's the most tender and sensitive person who would never judge me. I bet she would be so great to have sex with, and we'd be in the midnight and this and that. Whatever is the romantic ideal, it's very rarely much to do with the actual person, which makes it very selfish. The projected romantic ideal. I want you to be in a black negligee, and I want you to be like this, and could you put little cat wings on here, and could you do this, and could you do that? Oh, that would make me so happy. And the person can oblige in order to meet their own need and attachment, in order to please, or for a bargain. Okay, well, I want you to wear leather-studded this, and do that, and do this, and do that. Well, gee, I didn't know you were that kind of girl. That's not fitting my romantic attachment. Well, wake up, I'm a human being. Well, I'm not sure that I'm interested. I don't respect women that just like having sex with 3 guys. Oh my goodness, and so, well, I wasn't I'm not here because I'm romantically idealizing you. I thought you were a good fuck. I'm here for lust. You're here for a romantic ideal. You think I've ruined it. You've ruined it for me. So you have these tensions in the brain. Or you have the marriage where the need and attachment and the romantic idealism is with one partner, but the very person you think is so politically correct in your left brain, culturally sculpted ideal is not someone you want to fuck. Nice women, they're kind and sensitive. They never raise their voice. They move everything gracefully, and this and that, the other, and they're so perfect. I don't want to hurt her. What am I going to do? They're just so sensitive, and I should be serving them milk with butterflies and keeping at a distance because I don't want to ruin their pristine goddessy nature. And and then it's like, what? You brought a condom? You knew I wanted to have sex with you? Oh, it's ruined. And because the cultural ideal, which is really what it is, it's a projection that is framed largely by the cultural deities. Which of course sacrifice being a very big one for women. She just sacrifices herself for everyone. So wonderful. No, I don't want to have sex with her. Forget it. But could I have a better wife? Could I have a better ideal? It's like sacrifice, and then she understands me when I cheat on her. It's like, oh gosh, I couldn't have sex with that person. And so there's this split within the culture that becomes part of the split of each individual. This split is in the culture. You have the Catholic Church priesting celibacy, and then you have Catholic priests having more sex with young boys than the average man. Huge split. And then beating the young boys if they talk about it and disowning them. And the Pope and hierarchy, look at Mea Culpa Maxima. It's a great documentary. We have the split is in the culture. And then men growing up in a divided culture have the split in their own psyche. Because when young boys say, oh, I want to touch you, you're wonderful, I just want to touch your breasts and do like this, everyone laughs and humiliates them and says, you stupid boy. That, you have to be cool, you have to do the exact opposite. In fact, the more warm and excited you are about a girl when you're 5, 6 years old, the more detached you have to be. I don't like girls, they're disgusting. Oh, that's a cool boy. That's awfully cool. Yeah, I don't care what anyone else thinks. I'm important. Oh, I like that boy. He's so cute. And the culture does this splitting. So the individuals carry the split between the romantic idealism typically and the lust. In the Troubadourian age, there was actually, you would never have sex with your muse or whatever because it would ruin it. She was the one to write poetry to and this and that and the other. And so this split first comes in the culture, then it enters every person's brain. And as Helen Fisher points out, these are actually different versions. They're different brain systems. The need attachment system is independent of any of the others. So you can feel romantic love and lust for someone and no attachment. You can feel attachment, no lust, and no ideal. You can feel lust and attachment and disrespect the other person and not idealize them. You can feel them all in any combination imaginable. Now, this is important in understanding, for example, my sweetheart is very close to my romantic ideal and lower on my lust scale. And I'm perfectly content to marry my ideal, and I'm relatively content to suppress my lust in order to satisfy the fact that she's very clear that she does not want me to have sex with other women. She's absolutely clear about that and absolutely clear that the relationship is over as far as she's concerned if I have sex with other women. I'm absolutely clear that I've never lied to anyone and don't plan to start. I've never cheated on anyone, don't plan to start. So I have lust for all kinds of women. And in each case, I just come to the conclusion, well, I'd much rather spend most of my days with an amazing woman who's an amazing friend, and we have wonderful sex when we have sex. She would actually like it more than me, ironically. But I have lust that I suppress to other people, and I include her in that. I tell her, I have this fantasy about this and that and the other because I want transparency, and she doesn't get it. She doesn't get that if I have lust, it doesn't mean that I want to be in a relationship. In fact, I'm absolutely certain I don't want to be in a relationship with any of more than a dozen women that I have varying degrees of lust towards that are in our lives. And I'm also pretty clear, given that I'm probably better off in the overall complexity of our current culture. We have a very taboo, all kinds of hurdles and jealousies and all that make having lust in more than one partner just complicated. And I know those complications because I've explored them in all kinds of different ways. And so I'm okay with the fact that I am not with the most passionate sexual lover of my entire life, this one, or the almost most passionate lover of my life, this one, where we'd have sex 2, 3, 4 times every single day for months on end and could never get enough of ourselves. I'm perfectly satisfied with the fact that those women did not like who I was as a human being and were always pushing at me to be different. I had to make a choice. Greatest sex of my life, etc., or someone that really liked. Now, after 10,000 women and talking and this and that and the other, one has to make certain choices. This comes into the value hierarchy. So for me, it's conversation, honesty, sincere tenderness and caring, and physical affection. For example, we may not have a lot of intercourse, but we cuddle, hug, play around physically, and often jointly masturbate every day. And so I don't feel physically deprived. And the kind of balance point is she's aware of, and I include her in the fact that I have fantasies about other people. And I have massages in which I get erections, in which I keep my underwear on and don't act on that. But there's a sexual flow with some of the masseuses. I'm here in Phuket, Thailand. And so this is independent, meaning the fact that I see someone and get aroused has absolutely nothing to do with it being practical, appropriate, etc., that I be in a relationship, or that I respect and idealize the person. There's different parts. And this ties into the next thing, because sexual energy is very tied to life energy. And life energy has a template developed in childhood. And I want to frame it like this. The way that the woman, the mother, and the father and the culture treats the feminine in the boy. Now this brings in a very big part of love, which is the feminine and masculine expression, which the Chinese do, I think, the best job in their expression of yin and yang. We have the feminine and masculine. So the yang is the point. The yin is the circle. The yang is the speaker. The yin is the listener. The yang is the teacher. The yin is the student. The yang is the individual. The yin is the community. The yang is getting to the point. The yin is enjoying the moment. So this is just a very tiny slice of the masculine-feminine polarity. And you can tell that I'm pretty yang because the presence in this video is not optimum. There's pain, there's this, there's that, there's a lot of emphasis on the words and the points, as opposed to a much more feminine way of engaging around this might be to dance together. It's just, I think I'd lose you as a Western audience in the dance in a lot of the cases. The entire message that I've gotten as a man is that my masculine traits, teaching, articulating, making things, doing things, having power, getting to the point, being efficient, having money, making money, having ideas, talking, is all much more valuable than the counterpart. And although that is irrational and unscientific, it is the chauvinism of our culture. Now, getting back to this balance, the way that a boy's feminine side, the part of him that responds, the part of him that feels, the part of his body, his listening part, his spontaneity, his innocence, his openness, the way that the feminine in the boy is treated, which is typically harshly abused in an American environment, creates a template that is internalized in the contract of abuse, where a boy, in order to fit the cultural identity, starts attacking and shaming his own feminine and exonerating his own masculine to mirror the pattern of the culture towards him. You ever heard of soft boys? Have they ever been treated with honor and dignity in a Western culture? I haven't seen it. The softness is the feminine side. Now, in a culture that deifies and honors the feminine in the boy equal to the masculine, this template is a template of balance and honor, back to the balance of the masculine and feminine within the boy. So when that doesn't happen, when in fact the most feminine boys are shamed, bullied, and humiliated, and by extension through the mirror neurons, the feminine side of the entire male population is brutalized, humiliated, abandoned, raped, fucked, attacked, stolen from, pushed at, violated. The template inside the boy towards their own feminine, in order to accommodate the abuse going on in the culture that is so overwhelming that one person can't stand up against the mass of the culture. The emphasis is compliance, which is what is taught in the education system. Compliance, which is the domination of the feminine by the masculine. Now, by the time this has been perfected in the teenage years by the boy, that he can dominate and dehumanize his own feminine to be accepted as a man, he now has a template of energy in him. That energy comes in its unity and balance. He quickly siphons it over to his masculine, abuses his feminine, and then more energy comes in and he does that. Now then he comes into a sexual relationship. Now, sexual relationship is just energy flow. It is an intense flow of energy that, at its best, brings together emotional, mental, and physical forces, all in the biology of the body, to create this beautiful third energy and orgasm. Now, for that flow to happen at an intense rate, which is called great sex, there has to be a mirroring. We're looking at bandwidth here. Flow, bandwidth. You know, the great orgasm of a 4K movie over the internet does not happen on a phone line with 2 bits of kilobits per second. It might take 50 to 100 megabytes per second to produce. So you've got high bandwidth. Now the trouble is the bandwidth, much like a plug and a thing. If we look at an American plug, and then have the counterpart being you've got the outlet and then you've got the plug into the outlet. Now this is going to create a high bandwidth of electricity. There's enough copper that these 3 prongs will fit into that hole, and electricity will flow, cities will come alive, lights will go on. This is flow because they match. But what's important to understand is that what matches the abused, shamed feminine in a high sexually charged relationship where the boy has an abused, shamed feminine within him, what matches that is a woman who denigrates her own femininity, who connects submissively, because you need that for flow. Meaning 2 penises, they don't quite do it. You've got to have receptivity. The question is of what? What is being received? Now, the woman who will take the hatred, the anger, the hostility of the boy towards his own feminine self, internalized as the hostility and hatred of the culture towards his own feminine. The woman who will take that, who will get off on it because that's what she's done her whole life. Women in America are raised to be as chauvinistic as men. Oh, I feel so weak. Oh, that's such a sissy thing to do. I don't want to feel that. I want to be like a man. I want to be strong. I don't want to cry. I don't want to be independent. I don't need him. I want to be masculine. Fuck the feminine. So these 2 get together. And the man who says, fuck the feminine in me, I hate her, da, 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 I want to pound the shit out of her. And the woman says, beat that pussy, I hate sensitive men, and I hate the sensitivity in me, and you pound that pussy, and that's a man, someone who can dominate me, someone who can get that juices flowing, rub that clitoris, pound it there, fuck me in both holes. Now, this is shared aggression towards the feminine, and it creates enormous flow. Oh, that was a great fuck. Trouble is, it doesn't match up with the ideal of the gentle, effeminate thing. You're putting 2 penises, pounding this frail, sensitive goddess, doesn't add up. So that the culture lines up the sexual charge towards massive abuse towards the feminine. Everyone seeks sexual flow. The trouble is, what's going to flow the best in an imbalanced man is an imbalanced woman. That allows the same shape, who has a weak feminine, who hates her feminine, who is ashamed of her feminine, and these 2 line up, and they've got it's architecturally designed to maximize the flow, but it is a flow of the externalized abuse of the internalized template, which is why you'll have a confusion. If this is where I know for myself, when I met a woman who wanted me to dominate her, there was some part that was alive with the power, but I really loved this woman. And I just said, no, I don't want to slap you. I don't want to pound that pussy. I want to take care and see who you are. You are beautiful to me. And can we connect on that basis? Not as much, because her sexual template was such that the compromise that sustained the relationship for a while was I became highly sarcastic, and I became highly diminishing in my comments, which she loved. Just turned her on no end. So when I would put her down making sarcastic, witty remarks, oh, she came alive. And she had all the time in the world for multiple orgasms, of course, which I wanted. But ultimately I said, you are training me to abuse you because you will not laugh, you will not deliver, you will not make time, and you will not compliment me unless I put you down. And I don't like it. So either we work on the template and you start rewarding me for treating you like an amazing woman that I think you are, or this is over. She stayed with the template and found another man to dominate her. And I moved on, feeling sad that my expression of my ideal of love was not as attractive as treating her like shit. But I understand what she is dealing with. A traumatized child, and she was, who is beaten into the ground psychologically for their feminine side, feels deeply ashamed of that. And when that's connected with violence and sensation and attraction, and it gets mingled in some mucked up relationships and things, it's very easy for someone's sexuality to be crossed with violence, number one, and for their shame to be crossed with love, number two, and for them consequently to be aroused when a man denigrates the feminine in them and views them from a superior nature. It's very painful. And what we're getting into is the difference between the masculine-feminine template and the principle of balance. Now, the principle of balance, and this is where we need principles because this is confusing. Like if you go fuck a prostitute who hates herself, many prostitutes do, and you hate your own feminine, which almost every man does, or you hate your own masculine, as many of the New Age feminist men do, hate their own masculine, as many women do. You don't get a healthy flow that is optimized for sustainable well-being unless you've got balance. What does balance mean? It means this yin and yang. It means that the masculine side of every human being is worshiping and protecting and loving the feminine. And the feminine is adoring and nurturing the masculine. We're not talking man and woman here. Both men and women are born with a masculine side with slight biases due to hormones towards the masculine and the feminine. But there are many women who are far more masculine than balanced men. And there are many men who are far more masculine than balanced women. And so we're not talking about gender here. In homosexual relationship, there has to be a listener at any point when someone's talking or nobody's communicating. There has to be a student at one point when someone's trying to coach or there's no teaching. There has to be a recipient to an invitation or there is no interaction. Hey, want to come to dinner? No. End of interaction. Hey, want to come to dinner? Masculine. I would love to come to dinner. Thank you for inviting me. Feminine. Now you've got an interaction. There has got to be an equality, and they have to be honored. They are equal. It's only an idiot that says that a negative pole in the DC battery is worse than the positive pole, because you don't get electricity without either one. Now, language and culture is constantly trying to brainwash us into thinking that the feminine is less than the masculine on every conceivable level. The elderly and children are in the feminine pole, with the middle-aged people that are the most assertiveness in the life cycle. It is the 15-year-old to probably 50-year-old that is the most masculine. But then at the outer edges, it becomes feminine again, where it starts to open up beyond the ego. The very elderly, if they have the chance to become wise, move out beyond their own boundaries into the community. The very young have not learned that there are all these weird and bizarre language distinctions about why this person is good and this person is bad. And they're just enjoying presence in the feminine state. You see, a child is not racist. A child loves a black smiling face as much as a white smiling face, as much as a pink smiling face, as much as a yellow. A child is in the feminine. It is the masculine that breaks things up into little boxes first, and then proceeds with its cultural arrogance to dictate which boxes are good and which boxes are bad, when a scientist looks at it and says, wait a minute. If you destroy any bit of the whole thing collapses. You know, you can't take a bicycle wheel and just delete 30 of the spokes and say that's bad. You start going flat. It's the wheel. It's the diversity that is the strength. It is the spoke going in opposite directions that holds the wheel of the circle, that holds the feminine principle intact, and that makes life go forward. And in case you haven't noticed it, all you arrogant idiots, every single arrogant, chauvinistic scientist was born from a woman. If you think you're so important, then the woman that gave birth to you is even more important, not less. These asymmetries make no scientific sense, but they are culturally beaten into every single child. They have an enormous impact on the tenderness, because when both honor one another, it truly is a love affair. You can have strong lust with an abusive masculine-feminine dynamic, but you cannot have romantic idealism. You cannot have safe, healthy need and attachment. When you feel insecure because you just lost your job and you want a comforting hand, you don't necessarily want to turn to the lover who only gets aroused because he whips you with this bit and then sticks 3 clothes pegs on your breasts and then drops candle wax on your anus. It's like, it's a different program. But these two tend to be a little bit safer, you know, the need, attachment, romantic idealism, etc. There tends to, you know, there doesn't tend to be a romantic ideal of, you know, watch your wife get raped by 5 guys and then stick a beer can up her pussy and see if it's exciting. So we haven't tried that yet. So the issue with templates and ideals, when they're often at odds, when the culture teaches you to abuse your own feminine, but then the culture teaches you mental ideals that are the exact opposite, is you have this phenomena where the really intense energy is around reenacting abusive imbalances, but the really healthy energy is much thinner, and it's about trying to right the balance to where you honor and develop your listening skills as much as your talking skills, where you honor the felt experience of the day as much as what you're trying to say, something I'm obviously working on. This takes work. Now back to love. None of these necessarily have anything to do with the other. But if they are not mutual, it will not be a sustainable relationship. The healthiest, most satisfying relationships involve all 3: need, romantic respect and idealism, and lust. Secure attachment, sexual pleasure, respect for the other person. Involve a mixture of the lover and the friend and the partners in meeting Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I'll get into next. But the initial impulse, the desire, is selfish, and the key in this is balance. But there are a couple of other types of love which I'll go into. One is joy in the presence, where you just feel joy. I had this with a house cleaner of mine, and she had it with me. It drove her boyfriend nuts. Wasn't at all sexual, but we just felt very happy. She said she could feel when I was in the house, and it made her really happy. And I felt the same way. I felt it as soon as I interviewed her. And I wanted her as my house cleaner because I wanted to feel happy. And every time I was around her, I felt happy. There was no reason. I disagreed with several of her policies. I didn't like all of her behavior. I didn't think she was a suitable partner. I was certainly not going to interfere with her relationship. But I felt this great joy in her presence. And I smiled in just the sheer joy of being around her. And she did the same. And there was joy in talking together. When she massaged my feet, I felt this lovely tingling energy, joy in the presence. It was just so beautiful. And her boyfriend eventually moved them because she wouldn't stop working for me, saying correctly that we weren't doing anything wrong. But he couldn't stand it. And so he moved. He said, I'm going to marry you. As soon as I got married, he moved out of driving range of the job so that they were an hour away, thus killing the relationship. Which brings me to a very important distinction in this love, romantic, idealism, attachment. So he needed her, he lusted for her, and he may have had a little of the romantic ideal for her. But the difference, and I talked with her, she lusted after him, she needed him, and had a little of the romantic ideal towards him. She didn't think too highly of some of his traits, which didn't seem to be terribly impressive in my opinion either. So he didn't meet either of our romantic ideals very highly. But then again, she didn't meet a lot of his romantic ideals highly because he was quite chauvinistic and she was very feminine. And he has been taught to think poorly of that, as has she, for that matter. So they fit sexually, even though he was very masculine and feminine, which created a strong sexual flow. They fit because both of them devalued her feminine side. And so you had sexual flow from the difference, and then you had harmony in the internalized abuse of the feminine on both sides. And so this all being self-oriented, and his behavior moving away from the state because he felt better despite the fact that it was a good job for her, and talking and doing all the house cleaning and stuff together was one of the best points in both of our weeks. This is the difference between the selfish love that is about oneself and the love that is about the other. Now, there's only one kind of love. There's actually several other kinds of love that are selfish, including the joy of the present in the presence. It doesn't tend to be highly selfish in the sense, but feeling joy, I feel great around you and I want to be close, is also predicated on mutuality, meaning, so it was with this housekeeper. Now, a few years later, I met another woman who was my housekeeper, and I again felt that joy in the presence. But with her, there was a difference in speed, etc. And when I expressed, like, oh, it's so nice to see you, she felt very uncomfortable, which is my point, that most loves that originate in the self have to be mutual and in balance, or they are not about the other person, they are about oneself. And need, lust, romantic idealism, joy in the presence, they're all about me. They're all about you. There's only one kind of love, and this is a very interesting point because it's a mature love. These are also instinctual. I mean, I didn't decide to have joy in the presence with this housekeeper and not with this one. I just felt it. It's just there. It's not a choice or an earned, willed thing. It is it's a feminine and self-centered feeling. But there is one type of love that is about the other person, and it is not a feeling. It is a masculine love. It is called being loving. Now this is when the yang, the masculine, decides as a willed conscious choice, I am going to be loving to you. Now, this is the only selfless or other-oriented love where it starts with the other. Now, what differentiates it is it's not a request for any one thing or another. I'm not saying, I want to fuck you. When I say I want to be loving, the first question is, what makes you feel loved? Do you feel loved that somebody wants to love you? Oh, you don't? Fine. I will disappear. You don't want to be loved by me or at all? Okay. How far away would you like me to go? Would you like me to ignore you when I meet you on the road? Would you like me to smile and pretend we haven't had this conversation as casual acquaintances? Would you like to have a hug but nothing more? What would you like as a way of not being loved? Well, just never talk to me again. Done. You got it. I'm out of your life. Being loving is taking the cue from the other on proximity, intention, language. We'll get into love language and we'll get into to love language. There's one other thing I want to get into. But being loving has to do with the other person. And it's actually Maslow's hierarchy of needs that we need to get onto. And when you want to be loving to someone, in our culture, the first thing you have to assess is the word terrifying to them. It's the technical word. If you're wanting to be right and be technical, use it. If you want to be loving and you're dealing with a redneck, probably better be more indirect. But being loving is basically the facilitation in conscious partnering with the other person of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Begins with a question. Are you surviving? Do you have the sex you need, the air you need, the water you need, the food you need, the warmth and shelter you need? Yes or no? If not, can I help? Level 1, meeting need. Every single human being, Abraham Maslow discovered, has a hierarchy of needs and has the same thing, and they are needs. Try not breathing for 3 minutes, you got it. Now, some people do not have their needs met. Their diet is erratic. They really ought to be having some cranberry juice for a urinary infection, but they don't have the money to buy it. They don't have a car. They do not have their physical needs. They can't sleep well. Their needs are not being met. Helping them meet those needs as an act of service is being loving. Now, when people have all kinds of shame around their own femininity, receiving, just in the polarity of chauvinism, going back to that, to give is masculine, to receive is feminine. In a chauvinistic culture, anyone who is receiving anything is viewed as weak and inferior. Anyone who is giving something is viewed as powerful and superior, because the mistake goes very deep in the culture in thinking, erroneously, that masculine energy is more valuable than feminine energy. Again, unscientific and unpractical. You cannot give something to someone if they will not receive it. You cannot receive something if someone will not give it. They are an exchange of energy that requires two equal parts. But we drill it into people that they are weak if they receive things, if they need things, da-da-da-da-da. So trying to meet someone's need who has been drilled into the shame of chauvinism, they may have a higher need not to be shamed than they need to eat good food. Now, in truth, there is no conflict. This is just drilled, brainwashed chauvinism onto another victim of chauvinism in our cult. But that aside, helping them in some way that feels dignified to them meet their needs. For example, they don't want a handout? Fine, give them a job. It's no different. I'm giving you a job so that you can make money, so that this, and I'm finding something for you to do. Oh, I don't want to do that. Well, fine, we'll find you some other person that, what do we have to do before you can receive and not feel shitty about yourself in a chauvinistic culture? It's a problem. But being loving is you meet and help someone meet the needs. Being more loving is empowering them to the next level, security. How do you give people the most security? Teaching them how to meet their own needs. If that's going to be doable, obviously with a 95-year-old person with a broken bone who's got 5 months to live, teaching them how to go to their own grocery shopping is not intelligent. But, with a 10-year-old who doesn't know how to make any money, teaching them how to apply for a paper route and stuff so that they can buy their own comic books, you're adding security. So the first is survival of the physical needs. The second is security. Do you feel secure? Do you feel secure? Where you sleep, do you feel safe? Do you feel secure in your neighborhood? So do it. Oh, what would make you feel? Some bars on your door would make you feel secure? Done. Let's go out, get some bars, screw them on your door. You feel secure now? Yes, thank you so much. Okay, you are being loving to that person. Now, obviously, you don't impose this. You dialogue. You learn. What's your biggest fear in your neighborhood? Would you mind if I did this for you? Would this be helpful? Now, keep in mind, this is the one form of love that is not about the self. It is a discipline. Now, you may, if you're feeling joy in the presence, be enjoying every moment you are with this woman, or you may hate them. You may say, I loathe this person. I cannot stand them. I'm not attracted to them. I don't respect them. I don't need them. But I am going to be loving. Why? Because I think it's the right thing to do. Because nobody else is, and I think the world would be a better place. Because it satisfies my sense of ideal. Because someone helped me once and I want to return the favor. Whatever it is, the reason, it's the discipline of behaving in a way that references the other person rather than starting with oneself. I think you should have these bars. Well, I don't like them. Well, I don't care. You're going to have them. No, it's listening to the other person and what makes them feel loved in their way. Now, this is a tension, as you can see from the template, because my girlfriend liked being treated sarcastically. She liked being put down. She liked being slapped in the face when we were having sex. She found it arousing to think of me having sex with other women. And so, being of service to her, I would have continued my path, being a sarcastic person, becoming more cutting, figuring out interesting ways to stimulate her sexually. But, and she would have assured me that she felt loved. In fact, she told me that she had never felt more loved in her entire life. But I didn't want to do that. So there's two tensions. There's a template in childhood of the love and language and abuse contract dynamic that tends to translate into the sexual arousal template. And then there is the healthy human being, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which every need has, and meeting those needs and providing what helps the person feel like they can survive and feel safe. What helps them feel secure? Would you